Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So in today's message, we're going to be looking at a quote from Aldous Huxley, and we're going to be inspired by an illustration that I found along with it, essentially a meme, right? And so, but I hope that you have a regular stream or source of inspiration. I enjoy signing up for emails that just automatically send me, inspiration, because we all need it, and it's something to think about, especially as we head into the new year, that we are doing what we can to take control of our life, right? That's generally the consensus as far as the spirit of the new year, right? Just doing what we can, because again, and I totally think it's true, as the Bible says, faith without works is dead. So we have to, we have to participate. We have to do our part, to bring things about in our life. Things are not just going to fall in our lap. I say that, sometimes they do, but most of the time there has to be a little bit of effort on our part, It doesn't have to always be a lot either. Just faith is a very real thing, and you never know, even if you just have a little bit of effort, you never know the impact it's going to have on another person or within your own life. But definitely being proactive is just a great thing, I think. It's always served me well. We're always going to have times where we're human beings. We know we have emotions. We have our ups and downs, and that's where it's good to kind of, be there for each other, to inspire one another and to lift one another up. And that's kind of the essence of the message today. So when I received this little gem of inspiration in my email, I just knew immediately I had to share it with you guys. So we're going to also look into the symbolism of it and just pull some further meaning out of it. And I hope you really enjoy it today. So let's go ahead and read the quote. Again, this is from Aldous Huxley, and the quote is, "The secret of genius is to carry the spirit of the child into old age, which means never losing your enthusiasm." And so when we look up the etymology of the word genius, we find that it means, I think I'm saying this right, a tutelary, like an instructive or moral spirit who guides and governs an individual through life. And that's from the late 14th century. And then again, we see a trend of definition evolution going from external to internal, personalizing it, which is really interesting because in the 1580s, genius came to mean a person of natural intelligence or talent. So we're going to focus on the prior meaning here, the tutelary or moral spirit who guides and governs an individual through life, which we find in a lot of these fairy tales and folklore, these mythical stories where the main character or the hero character, you might say, is helped along, at some point during the journey, the majority of the journey actually, by this helper character. So let's take a look at the word enthusiasm and then we'll pull it all together. So the etymology of enthusiasm, it actually has French, Latin, and Greek origins. For example, the Greek would be enthusiasmos. But it essentially means divine inspiration, enthusiasm, and then it says, in parentheses, produced by certain kinds of music, etc. So here we have this prompting, this external source that serves as a prompting to give us divine inspiration, right? And music was the example here. And then it says from, and it doesn't tell where this the origin of this word, but it says from enthusiasm, Zein. But it says be inspired or possessed by a god, be rapt, be in ecstasy. And then the coolest part of this is the first part of the word, enthusiasm, which is N-E-N. And then you have theos is actually from theos. So you have in theos, which means in God. In God. So that's where we get the divinely inspired or possessed by a God. Right? Or possessed by God. It says in the online etymology dictionary, possessed by a God. But again, we have the same, just a little side note for, it's interesting to me. We have the evolution in the 1650s. It says it acquired a derogatory sense of excessive religious emotion through the conceit of special revelation of God under the Puritans. And then, of course, by 1716, it's kind of like it reached a middle ground to mean fervor or zeal. But we're going to look at that original meaning there, that first meaning we looked at, which is to be divinely inspired, right? And then, of course, the genius part of the quote is that we can be divinely inspired by this moral or tutelary spirit who guides and governs. So suddenly, we see the meaning of this quote go from one being kind of self-dependent, or self-oriented, you might say, to having a helper, like many of the myths, right? So, again, looking at the quote, the secret of genius, so we could say the secret of the tutelary or moral spirit is to carry the spirit of the child, right, into old age. So the result of this helper is in the last part of the quote, which means never losing your enthusiasm, right? So it's not about just having zeal for life, but it's about being possessed by God, meaning like being kept by God, belonging to God. Being his child, forever, even into old age. So, again, in theos, being in God. And the Bible talks about, that if we abide in God, then it says, abide in me and I in you. So it's this intimate spiritual relationship, right? So, and then from the Christian lens, you might see the actual possession as being the Holy Spirit, part of God that resides inside of us. That spark, that divine spark of the greater fire. So, looking at the image, I couldn't find the artist of this image to give the credit to, and it may even be generated by AI, by software, by someone who just never, claimed the credit when they put it together. And I just want to pause here and mention, even computer software, a lot of people dismiss that as, not credible sometimes as true art, but I absolutely believe it is. And especially because there's choices to be made. Anytime you have a choice to be made and there's actions taken, then you have a hand in it. You know what I mean? And so in this case, she would be the artist. Again, I have my background in graphic design, so some of the most beautiful images I've ever seen have been photo manipulation, and it's just, they're incredible. The fantasy worlds that can be created, by merging together and blending different elements of our actual reality. It's just beautiful, But so even so, regardless of the artistic side of the image, right? In looking at this image, I feel like, archetypal symbolism, which supposedly originates in the collective unconscious, it can come from anyone because it is a part of the collective unconscious, right? Archetypal symbolism. So, it can still have a meaningful message, and it can be very personal in that it depends on our own subjective lens, the viewer, which means when you look at a work of art, you get what you need from it, you can read into it and it can speak to you in that manner, in a very personal way. And so two different people can extract two totally different messages from the same artwork, But if we look at this image, Who is the helper of the child? And furthermore, what attributes can we make note of in discerning people sharing that same spirit of love? Okay, so the moon, it gives light to see the path. So you might say that would be, if you personify this, it would be a friend or a partner, a family member, somebody that you're close to, essentially. If they are helping to illuminate your path, what are they doing? They're offering you insight, right? Guidance, and honesty. I would say even, those really good friends that are willing to share the hard truths with you, which is where we get iron sharpens iron, right? So the light in this image is keeping the child on the path. And, in the Bible, Jude chapter 1, verse 24 mentions this quality of God, that he keeps us from stumbling, see. So, again, we have the string that he's walking, like a tightrope. And it's, to me, very representative of that straight and narrow path, And then if we look at cats, there's so much symbolism when it comes to cats. But let me just share what my gut tells me about it. So in the context of the full image here, and the quote too, the cat, it could have been any animal, but cats are special because they're actually crepuscular, I think it's called crepuscular animals, meaning they're active in twilight. And so that we have this twilight image. And so it could mean that symbolically, during dark times of trials and tribulations, the helper spirit is very adept, right? If the cat is just another element of the helper spirit, maybe the moon, maybe these are all different elements of that same guiding, helping, instructing spirit, right? Protective spirit. The divine helper. So if the cat is an element of that, again, it would mean that during dark times of trials and tribulations, then the helper spirit is very adept, right? By his very nature, because cats are crepuscular, right? To aid you during those hard times, through the darkness, right? Because they've been there and done that, right? Or that spirit is very familiar with it. And so you're not alone. And it could also mean that during times in our life you might call low consciousness or naivety, so low lighting in that manner, as far as our psyche. The balloon symbolism, to me, here's what I get out of it. Balloons float, as we know. This to me is where, it's important that the person, the main character, the hero, the sojourner, you might say, the child that's walking the rope, it's important that they chose a child for the message. It makes sense in context because the spirit and the essence of the child is the main point of it all. So the balloon is attached to the child, right? To me, this represents his spirit, specifically the childlike spirit in us all, right? Because in these stories, the main character is a representation of us. It's supposed to help us to see deeper meaning and understanding in our own life through the lens of that hero character, And so, to me, the balloon is, because it's attached to the child, it represents his spirit. And also, just in looking up balloon symbolism, they symbolize dreams. And I love, the old nursery rhyme where it's, it ends with life is but a dream, to row your boat and life is but a dream. And so that's very appropriate here as we see this child on this journey, right? And then balloons also have been known to represent hope and lightheartedness and freedom. And I want to close with this. I know this is a little bit of a shorter message, but I just, here at the end of this year, and we're starting a new year, I wanted to offer you some inspiration, something a little bit more lighthearted. But I want to close by reading to you an example of divine help. So the title of Isaiah chapter 61 is The Year of the Lord's Favor. So it says, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all those who mourn, and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of His splendor. They will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. They will renew the ruined cities that have been devastated for generations. Strangers will shepherd your flocks. Foreigners will work your fields and vineyards, and you will be called priests of the Lord. You will be named ministers of our God. You will feed on the wealth of nations, and in their riches you will boast. Instead of your shame, you will receive a double portion, and instead of disgrace, you will rejoice in your inheritance. And so you will inherit a double portion in your land, and everlasting joy will be yours. For I, the Lord, love justice. I hate robbery and wrongdoing. In my faithfulness I will reward my people and make an everlasting covenant with them. Their descendants will be known among the nations, and their offspring among the peoples. All who see them will acknowledge that they are a people the Lord has blessed. I delight greatly in the Lord. My soul rejoices in my God, for He has clothed me with garments of salvation and arrayed me in a robe of His righteousness. As a bridegroom adorns his head like a priest, and as a bride adorns herself with her jewels. For as the soil makes the sprout come up, and a garden causes seeds to grow, so the sovereign Lord will make His righteousness and praise spring up before all nations." So we see here how God, when the Spirit of the sovereign Lord is on us, right? Because we are abiding in that Spirit, right? Then we are anointed at that point. And in this instance, there's basically you become a beacon, right, of that light. And so, because it says they will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of His splendor. So, I feel like in this image that we're looking at, the child is lifted up, to the moon and lit up. And so I feel like when you look at this image, to me, my first response, just instinctually, is, it's like that's all there is in all of existence is this one moment, because it's about the personal spirit and the intimacy with, the divine in the image. But if you reframe that as literally there are others, other people down on the ground looking up and seeing this, because the image is not from that angle. But if it were to be from that angle, then we would see that in doing this, in the divine, carrying the spirit of the child right into old age, right throughout your life, essentially, you are made an example. Your life is an example, and it gives hope, right? For others to want to also share in that same spirit and to be carried by that same spirit. So I just thought it was a really cool message. It's a message of hope and prosperity and of transformation, and how God can turn things around. And so I just hope that it has has blessed you in some way. I hope that it has been encouraging for you and inspiring. And I thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. And I hope that you have a beautiful day and a beautiful new year. And I will see you again very soon.